Ba Tangent 1, my people, and welcome to the Hardcore Endgame build guide for Ashe. A fun fact, he was originally supposed to be a female frame. True story. This is actually the concept art, which... wow. Skin, please? Anyway, old school players might remember Ashe as the press 4 to win frame, while newer players probably know him as...
Never heard of him.
Never heard of him.
Never heard of him.
Yeah, sadly he was nerfed and retooled a few years back. His 4 turned into a vomit-inducing shadow of its former self. No pun intended. Since then, though, he's received a handful of minor tweaks and buffs, which cumulatively put Ashe in a decent place overall. The introduction of Helminth infusions brought about some extremely powerful burst damage builds that revolve around an interaction between his Bladestorm and an augment for either Excalibur's Radial Blind or Banshee's Silence, which both boost finisher damage. But I find the playstyle to be fairly restrictive and slow. So despite the fact that playing Ashe was one of the things that got me hooked on Warframe initially, half a dozen years ago, he's been collecting dust for longer than I care to think about. And when I issued a challenge on stream recently to make Ashe my main again, I assumed DE would be the only ones who could make it happen. Turns out, a viewer by the name of Silver LOD had an idea that was enough to nudge me in the right direction. And the build I've got for you today is the result of our combined efforts.
Son of a bitch.
Build requirements. They're a mix of good news and bad news. Ashe Prime relics are currently vaulted, and Vanilla Ashe is locked away on the broken content island of Railjack. You only need an Oricane Reactor and 1 regular Forma. Arcane Energize is strongly recommended for energy management. A rank 4 or even rank 3 will probably get the job done just fine. A Helminth infusion of Yreli's Aquablades is required, so you'll need to build her. You get to sacrifice Yreli to Helminth and watch it slowly digest her over 23 hours.
Are you not entertained?
Why Aquablades? For the answer to that question, let's take a look at Ashe's kit. His passive causes bleed status effects to deal 25% increased damage and last 50% longer. After a 1-second delay, bleed status deals a tick of damage each second for 6 seconds, or in Ashe's case, 9 seconds. Bleed damage also bypasses armor completely, making it extremely potent versus some of the toughest enemies in the game. So you can see why Ashe was so excited to learn that Yreli's Aquablades deal slash damage with a guaranteed bleed proc.
It's gonna be great! It's gonna be great! It's gonna be great!
His first ability, Shuriken, also deals slash damage with a guaranteed bleed proc. He launches 2 spinning blades that seek out enemies within 60 meters and near the reticle position, even through walls and obstacles. While there are circumstances where it can come in handy, I don't end up using Shuriken all that much when playing this build, so you could slot Aquablades here. His second ability, Smoke Screen, is where a majority of his survivability comes from. He drops a smoke bomb at his feet, staggering nearby enemies and rendering Ashe invisible. There's not much to talk about here. Enemies can't see him, he takes very little damage, he's able to survive.
What do you want me to say?
Ashe's third ability allows him to teleport to a target on his reticle. If that target is an enemy, it's staggered and made vulnerable to a melee finisher. There's some good utility to be had in dashing from one location to another, but as with Shuriken, I don't end up using teleport very often, so this is another good spot for Aquablades. Decide whether you'd prefer some more range damage with Shuriken, or decent mobility with teleport, and then do whichever bare knuckles your honeysuckle. And last up is Ashe's ult, Bladestorm, which has 2 phases. Phase 1 starts when you activate the ability, and lets you mark targets by moving your reticle over them. Pressing the ability key a second time ends the marking phase, and sends 2 shadow clones teleporting between marked targets, hitting each with 3 finisher attacks, which deal heavy damage and have a guaranteed bleed proc. Bladestorm drains 12 energy per marked target baseline, but that's cut in half if you cast it while invisible. As I mentioned earlier, there are ways to ramp up this damage to silly numbers, but the drawback to relying on Bladestorm alone is that its animations can take a while to finish, leaving you with significant downtime between uses.
Are you yawning in the middle of this while I'm breaking it down? Huh?
This build works by still empowering Bladestorm's burst damage through ability strength, but using another ability, Aquablades, to provide consistent, sustained damage. The result is, honestly, some extremely smooth and enjoyable gameplay in content right up to and including Steel Path. Drop a smoke screen, Activate Aquablades, then move through nearby enemies applying slash procs while targeting and executing distant enemies with Bladestorm. It gets even more deadly when you add a melee weapon that can quickly gain max combo count, like this Nami Skyla Prime build, and a gun that can quickly apply viral procs to multiple enemies, like this Verma Splicer Shrewd Flutterfire kick gun I made specifically to complement the build.
It's like we were made for each other.
Just to be clear though, you don't have to make this gun for the build to work, and any weapon that can apply viral procs is going to boost your DPS because those procs increase bleed damage, which is exactly what this Ashe build specializes in. Which, of course, leads us to the build. Steel Charge in the Aura slot because 1. We need the mod capacity, 2. It fits Ashe's native polarity, and 3. It empowers Bladestorm. Ability strength from Blind Rage, Umbral Intensify, Augur Secrets, and Power Drift further boost the damage of Bladestorm, as well as Aquablades and Shuriken should you decide to keep and use it. Duration from Narrow-Minded, Augur Message, and Prime Continuity gives 22 seconds of invisibility, and Aquablades that last for over 2 minutes. The range from Stretch offsets Narrow-Minded enough that we can target enemies nearly 40 meters away with Bladestorm and Teleport should you decide that's your jam. And Prime Flow gives us a thick energy pool to draw from when we send our Shadow Clones off to do our dirty work.
I don't like to kill people, but if I pretend they're my mom, it's easy.
Again, Arcane Energize is strongly recommended, but in the other slot, you can use Arcane Fury for more Bladestorm damage, or Arcane Ultimatum for a silly amount of armor whenever a Shadow Clone gets a kill. 2 quick notes before I leave. First, bleed damage bypasses armor, but not shields, which means this setup is going to perform much better in general against Grineer and Infested than it does versus Corpus and Corrupted. An easy way to account for this is to carry a weapon modded for straight toxin damage, which does bypass shields. And second, though you'll have no trouble maintaining energy once this build gets rolling, it does require a jump start initially. You could use Zenuric for the energizing dash, or you could just drop an energy pad at mission start, which would allow you to use Naramon. If you're using that Nami Skyla Prime build I showed earlier, you only have to use Bladestorm once every 30 seconds to maintain your combo. If not, using Naramon means you don't have to worry about your combo count suddenly disappearing. Hey, speaking of suddenly disappearing,